राम हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे
जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवरधारी
जय राधा माधव जय कुंज विहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी
जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी
जय राधा माधव जय कुंज विहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवरधारी
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Vihari, Jaya Gopi Janvallabha, Jaya Girivardhari.
Jai Radha Madhava, Jayo Kunja Vihari, Jayo Gopi Janvallabha, Girivardhari.
Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunja Vihari, Jaya Gopi Janvallabha, Girivardhari.
Jayo Radha Madhava, Jayo Kunja Vihari, Jayo Gopi Janvallabha, Jayo Girivardhari.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama.
Rama Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare
जय गोपी जन वल्लभा जय गिरिवरधारी
जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज विहारी जय गोपी जन गिरिवरधारी
जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभा जय गिरिवरधारी
जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज विहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभा जय गिरिवरधारी
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे हरे
Hare Krishna. So, a very warm welcome to all of you for today's session on the Srimad Bhagavatam. We'll start our session with the prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya. नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवति उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी. So we discussed in our previous session in this 26th chapter of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagwan Kapil, he is explaining the Sankhya philosophy, the analysis of how this whole creation took place and how the different elements of creation, they got created from the energy of Krishna. We discussed in the previous session that how ego can, in this material world, this material ego or false ego, when it gets agitated by the three modes, there are different kinds of uh, sense objects, mind, intelligence, they get created. So mind gets created when false ego is agitated by mode of goodness. And the Lord to worship is Aniruddha. We discussed about that in the previous session. And then false ego, when agitated by mode of passion or Rajoguna, intelligence gets created, and intelligence is the discriminating power of the mind. Now today we'll begin our discussion with text 31, Shloka number 31 of the 26th chapter of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. तैजसानि तैजस् तैजसानीन्द्रियाण्येव क्रियाज्ञानविभागशः प्राणस्य हि क्रियाशक्तिर्बुद्धेर्विज्ञानशक्तिता तैजसानीन्द्रियाण्येव क्रियाज्ञानविभागशः प्राणस्य हि क्रियाशक्तिर्बुद्धेर्विज्ञानशक्तिता. Translation: Egoism in the mode of passion produces two kinds of senses: the senses for acquiring knowledge and the senses of action. The senses of action depend on the vital energy, and the senses for acquiring knowledge depend on intelligence. Now, you see, in the previous session, we discussed that false ego, when agitated by mode of passion, also produces material intelligence. Okay. And this material intelligence is responsible for material progress, or because intelligence is a higher faculty which is above the mind, and intelligence is the discriminating power of the mind to choose what is right, what is wrong. So when consciousness is contaminated by material atmosphere or by matter, okay, when consciousness gets contaminated by matter due to bodily conception, then what happens? Then a person starts to identify himself with the body because of false ego. Contaminated consciousness leads to bodily concept of life, where a person starts to identify with the body. Now we know that false ego in the mode of passion gives rise to material intelligence. Okay. So now this material intelligence, what does it do? Because a person is identifying himself with the body, so material intelligence gives the discerning power or discriminating power to choose what is right, what is wrong with respect to the bodily concept of life. Right? Now here in this shloka it is mentioned that Tejasani Indriyani eva. Indriyani means the senses. Okay. Kriya Jnana Vibhagashaha. Kriya means work or action. Okay. So Kriya Jnana Vibhagasha. Pranasya hi Kriya Shakti. Buddhir Vijnana Shaktita. So Indriyani means the senses, and we have discussed earlier that there are two kinds of senses: Jnanendriya and Karmendriya. Karmendriya means working senses, and Jnanendriya means knowledge acquiring senses. Karmendriya, here it is mentioned Kriya Jnana Vibhagasha. So, Karmendriya is also called as Kriya Indriya because they are the senses which perform action. Okay, so two kinds of senses are there, Jnanendriya and Karmendriya. Jnanendriya means knowledge acquiring senses, Karmendriya means working senses. So, five kinds of knowledge acquiring senses are there: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. And five kinds of working senses are there: hands, legs, speech, rectum, and genital. Okay, so these are the 10 kinds of senses. Okay, so here it is mentioned that pranasya hi kriya shaktir. So pranasya means pran vayu, or the vital energy of the living entity. Okay, buddhir vijnana shaktika. So basically, this vital energy of the living entity, it what is vital energy? So vital energy is the living force within the living entity, because of which a living entity identifies himself with this body and he is present within a particular body is because of that living force. So the living force here is called as pranasya hi kriya shaktir. So that living force or that prana, it it pushes a living entity to, or pushes the senses into action. That's what is mentioned here. Pranasya kriya shaktir buddhir vijnana shaktita. So pranasya hi kriya shaktir. So because of vital energy, because of prana shakti, there is kriya shakti and there is vijnana shakti. Kriya shakti is working senses or action, actionable items, or the action which a living entity performs. And vijnana shakti means knowledge. So the knowledge acquiring senses or Jnanendriya and the working senses or Karmendriya, they both function because of vital energy or prana. Prana means the vital energy of the living entity or the living force. Because without living force, senses cannot function, isn't it? Living force is the mapping of the spirit soul into this material body. These are little technical terms. It might be little difficult for all of you to understand, but if you keep hearing again and again, you'll get to understand everything. So the mapping of the spirit soul into this material body is called living force, because of which a living entity knows that he's living. For example, when we sleep in our dream, when we go to sleep and we start dreaming, why we dream? Because we are living in the real world. We are alive. That's why we are dreaming. If we die, we cannot dream. So living force means, or living condition means, because the living entity is eternal, he is eternally functioning entity. Activity is the constitution of the soul. So this body is active because spirit soul is active, isn't it? Now spirit soul is a completely spiritual entity. So the mapping of the spirit soul into this material body represent it is representative, or it is represented in this material body as living force or prana shakti. That is what is mentioned here. So because of prana shakti, there is kriya shakti and there is vijnana shakti. So because of that living force, these actionable senses and knowledge acquiring senses, they both function. The functioning of these two kinds of senses depend on the living force. Till the living force is there within this body, these two kinds of senses will work. And as soon as living force is, it goes out of the body, this living force moves to another body. So the mapping of the spirit soul moves to another body. The spirit soul starts to identify with another body. So those set of senses become functional, isn't it? Till this body is alive, the senses of this body are active. But once the living force leaves this body, all the senses of this body will stop functioning. Now, when the living force enters another body, the senses of that body will begin to function, isn't it? So, all the senses for their actions depend on the living force, which is also called Pran Shakti. So, now here in the Shloka, Bhagwan Kapil is saying that Tejasan Indriyanyeva. Tejasa means mode of passion. So, mode of passion gives rise to intelligence. False ego agitated by mode of passion gives rise to intelligence, material intelligence. Now, all the senses are also originating because of false ego being agitated by mode of passion. So, what does it mean? What does it mean? It means that this rajoguna or mode of passion leads to all the actions which a living entity performs in this material creation. A living entity in this material creation, the actions which he performs for material advancement, for bodily concept of life. When a person is active in bodily concept of life, he is driven by mode of passion. So intelligence also works according to passionate mode. That means intelligence, because this is material intelligence, so material intelligence also works in such a way that it gives the discrimination for a living entity to choose always that activity. Because you see, if you see the hierarchy, mode of goodness gives rise to mind, mode of passion gives rise to material intelligence. Okay, and then the same mode of passion also gives rise to the senses. Okay, and the senses are active because of prana shakti or vital force. So vital force is active because of rajoguna or because of mode of passion, and now we also are seeing that intelligence is active because intelligence is material. So intelligence is active on a material platform or bodily platform. So the senses also become active on bodily platform or mental platform or material platform, isn't it? So then what happens? Then what happens? Now, because intelligence is active on bodily platform or material platform, which is also called bodily platform, and then now the senses are also active on bodily platform. So what happens? A living entity starts to work towards material advancement, right? A living entity starts to work for material advancement. That is why those animals or those living entities or those human beings who are very passionate, they generally work very hard for sense gratification because they are very passionate in nature. And that is the cause for all the material advancement that we see in this world. So whatever material advancement that we see in this world is because of false ego being agitated by mode of passion. Because false ego being agitated by mode of passion produces material intelligence to work materially and the material senses to work materially. Right? So, how to come out of this bodily concept? How to come out of this material concept of life? So, as we know, mind is produced by false ego in mode of goodness. Now, passion brings materiality in our life. Passion increases material domination or it increases material concept of life, bodily concept of life. Passion, it increases material concept in our life. It increases bodily concept in our life. Now, to reduce the effect of passion, we require goodness, isn't it? Now, as we know, false ego, when agitated by mode of goodness, what is produced? Mind. Okay. Therefore, if we engage the mind in Krishna, in the Supreme Lord, then what happens? When the mind is engaged in Krishna, then what happens? Gradually, because what does the mind do? Produces desires. Okay. Now, a living entity cannot be desireless. We know that. Spirit soul can never be desireless. So a living entity can never be desireless. And desires are produced because of the mind. Okay. So now I have discussed, I have told you earlier also in the previous session we discussed that material mind is the covering of our original mind. We have, as spirit souls, we have our original mind. But when we come into this material world, the spirit soul, his consciousness becomes contaminated, isn't it? So when consciousness becomes contaminated, spiritual mind gets covered by material mind. Spiritual intelligence gets covered by material intelligence, and both these things happen because real ego gets covered by false ego. Okay, we discussed in our previous session. So desires are a function of the spirit soul. Spirit soul cannot be desireless. A living entity cannot be desireless. Desire has to be there. Now, everything is happening because of desire, isn't it? The living entity, how he enters this material world? Because of desires which are not in line with Krishna's desires. When a living entity desires something which is not in line with Krishna's desires, that's when he falls into this material creation. Okay. So, these desires, when reflected through false ego, are called material desires. The same desires, when reflected through real ego, they are spiritual in nature. So the goal of human life is not to stop desires, because desires cannot be stopped. It's impossible. No one can stop desires or no one can end desires. No. Desires can only be purified by the process of bhakti. Okay. So desires can be purified by bhakti. And how will desires be purified? when we engage the mind, which is a product of goodness, so when we engage the mind in Krishna, so how do we engage the mind in Krishna? We engage the mind in Krishna by hearing from the spiritual master, by hearing from Guru. So when we hear from the spiritual master, then what happens? Our consciousness becomes purified, because the root cause of material contamination is material consciousness or impure consciousness or contaminated consciousness. Okay. So that is why we see that in this material world, generally those people who are very passionate, they progress materially. Of course, material progress is not eternal. For some time they'll progress, but ultimately law of karma will take place and that progress will be checked by the laws of nature. No one can advance materially very to a large extent, especially on earthly planet. In the heavenly planets also, all the demigods, they are all passionate living entities. Okay. Most of the devatas who live in the upper planetary systems, they are generally very passionate in nature. And that is why they have great desire for sense gratification. So those living entities who are devotees of Krishna, but they also have a desire for sense gratification too much, they generally go to heavenly planets. And too much sense gratification is because of mode of passion or rajoguna. So that is why a person who is in, when false ego is driven by mode of passion, so when a person is in under the influence of mode of passion, rajoguna, generally it becomes an impetus for him to advance materially. And sometimes people also advance materially because of mode of passion. But how long can that last? How long will this material progress last? For a few years, that's all. But the spiritual advancement which a person makes, that is eternal. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, प्राप्य पुण्य कृताम लोकान उषित्वा शाश्वती समा शुचि नाम श्रीमताम गे योग भ्रष्टो भी जायते. That those who are on the path of spiritual life, those who are on the path of bhakti, their whatever progress they make, that is eternal. But those who are on the path of material advancement because of mode of passion or rajoguna, that advancement will not last long. It will not last. Suddenly it will end one day. And then the spirit soul starts to lament that I wasted my human life in unnecessary material pursuits. Right? So that is why spiritual advancement is possible only in mode of goodness. Till a person is in mode of passion, he cannot make real spiritual advancement. He has to come in the mode of goodness to experience spiritual advancement. So, mode of goodness is purified state of existence, purified state of material existence. Of course, mode of goodness is also material mode, but when a person is in mode of goodness, he is in a purified material state. So, in purified material state, a person is more conducive for bhakti or uh, spiritual realization. So, spiritual realization is only possible when a person gradually raises himself from mode of passion to mode of goodness. And that happens because of proper hearing from proper sources, especially hearing from spiritual master. Now, text 32, shloka number 32. तामसाच्च विकुर्वाणात् भगवद्वीर्यचोदितात् शब्दमात्रमभूत्तस्मात् नभश्रोत्रं तु शब्दगम् तामसाच्च विकुर्वाणात् भगवद्वीर्यचोदितात् शब्दमात्रमभूत्तस्मान् नभश्रोत्रं तु शब्दगम्. Translation: when egoism in ignorance is agitated by the sex energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the subtle element sound is manifested, and from sound comes the ethereal sky and the sense of hearing. Now you see. So now here, false ego, when agitated by mode of goodness, produced mind. False ego, when agitated by mode of passion, produced the 10 senses and material intelligence. Now, here in this shloka, it is mentioned that when false ego is agitated by mode of ignorance, then what happens? So, it is mentioned here that when egoism in ignorance is agitated by the sex energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, the sex energy of Supreme Personality of Godhead is represented by Lord Shiva. Okay. So the subtle element sound is manifested. So then what happens? When the ego, the false ego in mode of is agitated by mode of ignorance, and by the, you see, it is mentioned here, Bhagavad Virya Chodita. Bhagavad Virya Chodita. That means Bhagavad Virya. Bhagavad Virya means the creative potency of the Lord, or by, which is also called sex potency or sex energy of the Lord. So, Shabda Matram Abhut Tasman. So, such a person, Shabda Matram. So, because of that, Shabda Matra, or we can say that sound, material sound gets manifested. Okay. And then, Nabha Shrotram to Shabdagam. And from this sound, ethereal sky or this whole space, what we see, gets created. So, very important shloka. So what is Bhagwan Kapil saying here? So this sound, you see, is such an important element. From sound, this whole ethereal sky or this whole space gets created. From the subtle element sound. Okay. And therefore, sound is the fundamental principle of this material creation. And it's not that sound exists only in the material world. No. Sound exists in the spiritual realm also. Sound exists in material realm also and spiritual realm also. So in the material realm, the sound is manifest in the form of nonsensical sounds, which we see in the form of modern books, modern newspapers, media. These are all what? These are all material sound manifest in this material creation. Okay. So material sound gets manifest in this material world in the form of all these nonsensical sounds which we hear, which we keep hearing. So our material existence originates from this material sound. This contaminated consciousness is because of material sound, because material sound produces this whole sky or the whole space. So this material sound gives rise to all the elements of sense gratification. Okay. So if material sound gives rise to our material life, spiritual sound can revive our spiritual life also. What is the root cause of our material life? Contaminated consciousness. And how consciousness gets contaminated? Because of material sound. Therefore, material sound is the cause of our material life, and therefore, if we hear spiritual sound, our spiritual life is revived. For example, in Bhagavad Gita, Arjun, he was thinking materially, isn't it? In the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and even in the second chapter, in the first 10 shlokas, Arjun was thinking materially. Then what happened? Now, material problems have no material solutions. Material problems have only spiritual solutions. We must know this. Material problems have no material solutions. Material problems have only and only spiritual solutions. So when Arjun was confused, he was in dilemma, he was in distress in the Bhagavad Gita on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. What did Krishna do? Did Krishna give him material sound or material knowledge? No. Krishna gave him spiritual knowledge. Because material problems have no material solutions. Material problems have only spiritual solutions. We must know this. So that is why Vedic knowledge is called as Shruti. Vedic knowledge is called as Shruti. This process of Shravanam, this process of Shravanam, it started at the beginning of creation from Lord Brahma. If you remember, the first shloka of Srimad Bhagavatam talks about it. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavai. Lord Brahma, he received initially this knowledge of spiritual awakening from Krishna himself, from the Supreme Lord himself, from within the heart. Right? So, when the Lord speaks, that is not material sound, it is spiritual sound. That is why Bhagavad Gita is so important. Because material sounds leads us to material life or material progress. Spiritual sound will lead us to spiritual progress and to revive our constitutional position, to revive our bhakti. Spiritual sound is very, very important. So therefore, Shravanam is the basis of our material life also. If we do Shravanam from nonsensical people like Mayavadis, atheistic people, or these modern scientists, so-called so-called modern scientists, they are not modern scientists, they are basically speculators. And in the process of speculation, they do some inventions or some research, they find something and they claim themselves as big, big scientists. Scientist means a person who is active in science. But real science is the science of God, right? But no material scientist wants to touch that topic. Why? Because they have no clue about God, about the Supreme Lord Krishna. Why? Because they are all material. Their intelligence is material. Just now we are discussing, isn't it? Their consciousness is contaminated. They are driven by false ego and their consciousness is fully material. So they have no understanding of Krishna or God. So that is why um, if we hear these material scientists, material philosophers, we'll become materially contaminated. But if we hear spiritualists or the Supreme Lord Krishna and his representative, the spiritual master, then our spiritual consciousness gets revived automatically. So that is why, and we see that in Bhagavad Gita, when Arjun, just by hearing from Krishna, he became, again, his spiritual consciousness got revived. Similarly, what did Arjun do in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita? He told Lord Krishna, Shishyaste ham shadi mam tvam prapannam, that Krishna, I am surrendering to you as disciple. I am making you as my guru and now you guide me. So similarly, every living entity In material world, because of material contamination, he develops false ego. Because of false ego being agitated by different modes, material life moves on or material life goes on. But that can be revived. That situation can be revived by hearing from proper source, hearing from the spiritual master. That is the process of Shravanam and Kirtanam, hearing and chanting the glories of Krishna. That is the only way by which we can revive our original spiritual consciousness. So that is what we are seeing here. Those who are new to the channel can subscribe. All of you can like, comment, share. We'll stop here. We'll continue our discussion in the next session. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.